Time to think, what should I do with my Sanctum Sanctorum set? To start with, I have to say that I actually never intended the Sanctum Sanctorum to be part of my Lego town as such. First of all, the Sanctum Sanctorum is obviously superhero themed, and the rest of my Lego town is not. Though this is not really a problem when I display the sets at home, because the Sanctum Sanctorum is not connected with the rest of the town. It is placed with the jazz club inside these glass cabinets of the IKEA Galaxy shelf, while the rest of the town is placed on top of the shelf. And the other issue that I have with the Sanctum Sanctorum is that it appears to be slightly differently scaled when compared to the other modular buildings. Of course, it is pretty hard to make a building realistically scale with the minifigures, because the minifigures are way too wide when compared to their height. Therefore, a modular building in minifigure scale usually already contains some compromises. The Sanctum Sanctorum just contains more obvious compromises. Like based on this picture, you could easily argue that each of those windows could be a door frame sized window. And that pretty much applies all the windows of this building. And at the top, we can even see small balconies in front of those windows. But the Lego model looks way smaller. These are definitely not door frame sized windows. Here we can see similar windows on the Jazz Club model, and this would be a way better scale for those windows. And if you look at the top windows here, there is definitely no room for those balconies. And even if those balconies were built in, those would not be in minifigure scale. Now, why is the scale that off with this building? I think that the answer is pretty simple. The designers of this set wanted to fit this building on a single base plate. And that means that you only have 32 struts to work with. Or actually a little less than that, because the shape of the building means that this would work as a corner building, so you have to reserve some of that width for a street. And once you do the math, you quickly realize that even though 4-stud wide windows would work well with the minifigures, you just don't have that much room. You'll have to go with 2-stud wide windows in order to fit the building in. Now, you cannot only change the scale of the building horizontally, otherwise it would look squished like this. In order to keep the proportions of the building same, you would have to reduce the height too. And that creates a different kind of a problem. Because if you scale your building down too much vertically, the floor height will be too short for the minifigures and they won't fit in. And that is exactly what happened with this set. But the designers had an interesting solution to fix this. On the outside, this appears to be 2 different floors. But if we peek at the interior, we can see that this has been designed as a single floor. There is no way that these grand bookcases would fit in here if these would be 2 different floors. Now, of course, the question is that if I wasn't sure about the scale or about the superhero theme, why did I buy this in the first place? Well, my original plan was to build something else out of this set. Or rather, I would first build it according to instructions, and then later on I would modify it to something else. Originally, I was planning to build facades inside these corners of buildings on top of the shelf. The aim was to fill every square centimeter on top of those shelves. The area inside that corner is half a base plate deep and little more than 1.5 base plates wide. So my Sanctum Sanctorum facade could have been wider than the building currently is. Perhaps the floors could have been as tall as the floors of the police station, and then the roof section would have been added on top of those. That way, some of the nougat color would have been visible on top of the extended boutique hotel. That modification would have solved the scale issues. And as it would have been a facade, there would have been an open back to it. I could have placed all the superheroes dueling inside the rooms, and they would have been hidden from the street view, but they still would be present in that alternative build. So that would have solved the superhero theme for me. That would have been a really nice idea to build, but in the end I decided that the facades were not the way to go forwards. That is because the facades might have worked on top of the shelf, but they wouldn't have looked great in Lego events when there is no backing wall behind the buildings. Therefore, I decided that I'm just gonna get some additional buildings and place them inside the glass cabinets of the IKEA Galax shelf. As soon as I bought the Jazz Club Modular, I decided that it would be added to my Lego town in events. I placed the Jazz Club next to the police station on other side of the Lego town, and in order to keep my layout symmetrical, I needed another building to go next to the assembly square, and Sanctum Sanctorum did that job. And actually the superhero theme kind of worked in Lego events. A lot of people were pointing out like, hey, there's Spider-Man, or hey, there is Iron Man, and so on. But nevertheless, the idea of building something else out of that set kept always coming back to my mind. I had already abandoned the idea of the facades, but what about an alt build of that set? There were a couple of designs in rebrickable.com that I seriously considered. Like this downtown library from Brick Artisan looked extremely interesting. This is highly detailed, and it is actually in the proper scale. The other design that I considered was this Greentum Crocorum by Greentum Coronet. This design is not as fancy as the downtown library, but then again this might fit better with the existing modular buildings. And I really like the idea behind this building because it tries to be sort of a version of the official old Green Grocer set. But actually, a couple of weeks ago, I had a completely new idea. In my previous video, I mentioned that I really think that the assembly square should continue with a building that has a mirror tower here on the other side of the building. And according to my layout master plan, that building should be a corner building that completes the assembly square. And then I would have a custom half modular behind that building. And finally, the Sanctum Sanctorum here at the end of the line. So the idea was that if I want to build something else out of my Sanctum Sanctorum, why couldn't I build this corner building out of it? That would also effectively mean that I would open up another spot for a regular straight modular building in my layout. And that might be a nice bit of future-proofing because I suspect that the next modular building is going to be a straight building because the previous one, the Tudor corner, was a corner building. But let's get back to the Sanctum Sanctorum alt build. Unfortunately, none of the alt builds available at rebrickable.com are corner buildings. But then again, even if there would have been a ready corner building, that would have not worked as such because I need to incorporate the assembly square tower in that design. One idea that I had was that if I could find a building that would look somewhat like the jazz club, or rather be a mirrored version of it, that might work as a starting point. I could then face the main section of the building to the side, and then modify the smaller section so that it would form a corner building. Here is the idea demonstrated with the police station. I have placed it slightly off with the idea that the purple section would be somewhat wider, same as the pizzeria on the jazz club. And I would then disassemble the purple section and rebuild it facing forwards and incorporate the missing assembly square tower in it. I think that that would be a pretty solid plan. The next question, of course, was that is there a replicable alt build of the Sanctum Sanctorum that has the same shape as the jazz club, but just mirrored? And there indeed is one. And there is this antique bookstore and townhouse by rebelnili. I think this building has quite a unique shape, and I think this would be an interesting building to add to my collection. Now, I'm not sure about the smaller section on the left of this building. It seems a bit off, but then again, I am planning to disassemble it and build something new there instead. So it shouldn't be a problem. But as usual, I want to first build this set as is, and then do some modifications later on. And that is why in the next video, we are going to disassemble our Sanctum Sanctorum and use the parts to build this antique bookstore and townhouse. If you're interested of building either this building or any of the others that I have shown in this video, you can find the instructions on Replicable. I'll put the links down to the description. And if you want to get the notification as soon as my next video is up, you should consider hitting that subscribe button down there. I will upload the next video ASAP, but remember, when a Sloth says that, it means as slowly as possible. Bye bye.